Walker's deck.
Yeah, I mean, it's just very innocuous, right? Just like 2-power flyer, how good can that really be? But these decks really want to use removal spells on things that they can't block. And that's not a winning plan against Chandra's Phoenix.
All right, well, Manny was the 4th seed, so he gets to be on the play in the finals here. Starts the game on Mutavault, so not a creature. Gonzalo does have the turn on Elvish Mystic, and that's usually pretty good in these style of decks. We'll see what Manny has in store, however. Looks like he has a kill. He's choosing between a threat and a kill spell for the elf here.
Yeah, I mean, it's like threat, kill spell, attack with Mutavault. It has plenty of options.
And goes with the 3rd, as you mentioned. Attack of Mutavault. It's going to get in for 2. Gonzalo is down to 18. You got to think, forcing of Gonzalo to have one of his 3 basic forests to start the game. This is a deck that punches itself a lot with its mana base.
Yeah, it's certainly true. And I think red decks in general just love when things like the Ravnica Shocklands are legal, right? It's like, it makes their job so much easier.
I mean, you even see that right in Modern, where when everybody's fetching and shocking, Burn becomes one of the top decks. And we see Gonzalo that turn made a Scry land and a Sylvan Caryatid, so a great start for him. But will it be good enough? Manny gets to play Young Pyromancer and then shocks the elf. Looks like that was the reason he didn't want to shock last turn. He wanted the elemental with it.
Yeah, I mean, it just gets to use his mana a little bit better, where he gets in the 2 points from the Mutavault, and then this turn he gets to use all his mana to use the shock and the Young Pyromancer, kill the elf. You weren't really scared of anything that Gonzalo could accelerate into on that turn. So it's like, okay, I'll let the elf live for a turn, but I'm definitely killing it next turn, and then you get an elemental out of the deal.
Yeah, and we're actually looking at Gonzalo's hand. This looks to be a great hand for this matchup. So he had Mystic Caryatid. I'm going to run you through some of the other cards in his hand. He has double Mizium Mortars, Courser of Krufix, another land, and then Xenagos the Reveler. Like, this seems almost tailor-made for the matchup.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you could pick your hand, like, maybe you want something like Nissa, just like looming on top of your deck, right? But other than that, it's like you have the acceleration, you have perfect mana, you have Courser of Krufix to hold the fort and gain some life, you have the removal spells to kill those important cards like Young Pyromancer. Like, what more do you want?
Yeah, Gonzalo had a choice there. He could have either made a Courser, but instead opted to just play a tap land and Mizium Mortars away the Young Pyromancer. Really didn't want Manny to have any more turns with that card.
Yeah, I mean, you could very easily see a turn from Manny where he's like, play a burn spell, make an elemental, play a burn spell, make an elemental, stoke the flames, make an elemental. It's just like, okay, well, things are kind of getting out of control here.
Yeah, and Manny's turn not too threatening here. He made another Mutavault and then swung the elemental and Mutavault. Character got to block the 2, so Gonzalo only took 1 off the elemental. He still had a very healthy 17. And now maybe he gets to start pushing some threats. He drew Chandra Pyromaster as well, so just another good card here. I don't know if he has another land yet, so he's going to start on Courser. Looks like he has a Landmore Wastes.
Yeah, so if he wanted to run Chandra out there, he would have to tap the Sylvan Caryatid, which is not really what you want to be doing.
Yeah, absolutely. He does get a free Landmore Waste off the top of his deck, though, so that's going to put him back up to 18. You see Stomping Ground waiting in the wings.
Yeah, now with the Courser, the Mutavaults are not that big of an issue as long as your Courser doesn't get stoked by the flames.
Yeah, Manny ends up there lightning strikes and sends it upstairs. Gonzalo down to 15, but that's a long way to go for Manny if he's on the casting burn spells to the face plan.
Yeah, it is, but a lot of the burn spells in this deck are very strong. You know, you have things like Stoke the Flames, which are really powerful. You have Chandra's Phoenix, which does a lot of the legwork. If you ever get to stick a Goblin Rabble Master and clear the way for it, that thing can get out of control really quickly. And he still has those 2 Mutavaults threatening too. So if he can get around this Courser of Krufix, he has a decent amount of threats now.
Yeah, he does play the Goblin Rabble Master we talked about for the turn, and rather than attacking, and this is one of my favorite plays, that he's going to Stoke the Flames at the Courser. I like this a lot because it means he doesn't have to suicide his Goblin token. He can actually just get a second one next turn.
Yeah, so now the Courser's out of the way, and you have Rabble Master, Goblin token, Elemental token, 2 Mutavaults, another Goblin token coming next turn potentially. Like, that's a lot of damage.
Yeah, and this was one of the better hands for Gonzalo here, so we'll see what he can do. He does have... It looks like he does have the option of Mizium Mortars overloaded available to him if he's willing to shock for it. No, actually, he's a red short. Well, no, he could shock for Stomping Ground and then make Mizium Mortars.
Right.
And this is where Mutavault becomes a problem, right? Like, he has that, but the Manny still has 4 more damage.
Yeah, so you shock down to 13, and then you take another 4 from Mutavaults, you're at 9, and it's like, well, last turn you were at 18. What happened?
Yeah. So his options are Mortars, Chandra, and Xenagos here. Let's see which one he goes for.
I mean, it's possible you might want to just cast mortars on the Rabble Master, make a Xenagos. I could also see overloading the Mizzium mortars. Gonzalo does have a lot of options.
He's going to make Xenagos, start there. Makes a Satyr. No, none of this plussing that we've seen all tournament. And then it's Llanowar Wastes and Mizzium Mortars on the Rabble Master. And like, you pretty much have to do that play, right? There's too much danger. If Manny can, say, go Mountain Shock on your Caryatid, on your Satyr token, like, the Mutavaults would help make the Rabble Master all the way into a 6-2 that turn. Like, this is a ton of damage.
Yeah, I don't think you can risk that Rabble Master hitting you. That's way too much.
Yeah, remember, the Mutavaults are also goblins, so yeah, you need to get him off the table. We'll see where Manny, how much reload he has. He does have another Mountain in hand. He's going to Magma Jet the Satyr token. Looks like he wants to get the Xenagos.
And that makes sense because you're losing out on some damage now, but I think Xenagos in the long run is going to prevent more damage than you would have to use to kill it this turn. So I think overall Manny is netting damage. Yeah, we're looking at his scry right now. Manny has a Fire Drinker Satyr and a third Mutavault on his scry. He does have a Mountain, so the third Mutavault's live. The question is whether he wants, whether he would rather draw Mutavault or a random card from the deck. Yeah, and he certainly has cards that are more powerful than Mutavault, but how greedy can you afford to be? Right, how greedy can you afford to be? How greedy do you need to be? You know, how do you feel about this game? There does seem to be a dynamic going on here where Manny's spent a lot of burn spells, and we've seen Shock, like, they're all going at creatures. They're all going at threats. None of them are going at Gonzalo. You know, we stoked the Flames to Courser, we Magma Jetted a Satyr, we shocked an Elvish Mystic. Like, I mean, they're not saying that any of those plays are bad. In fact, I think they were all correct. But it means that Gonzalo's at 15. We see Manny use Mutavault, and one of the tokens to take down Xenagos, the last token, hits Gonzalo. Now Gonzalo confidently knows what he wants to do. He's going to shock for Stomping Ground. Looks like Chandra. And she's going to... Does he want to kill Cedric Phillips or Chris Van Meter? Goes for the Cedric token. Yeah, let's kill Cedric. He's not even here this weekend. Probably watching at home. So just left with the Elemental token. He's got a pair of Mutavaults. Manny... Yeah, he played a Mountain last turn. So looks like he has the Fire Drinker Satyr. I think Lightning Strike is his last card. Yeah. So now Manny's in kind of an awkward spot because he kept the Fire Drinker Satyr on top, thinking that, like, basically any threat is a good threat, right? But now you're facing down this Chandra, and it's like, well, I don't know how I feel about keeping that Fire Drinker Satyr on top anymore, because getting rid of Chandra is a lot. Like 5 loyalty, that's 5 potential damage that could go at Gonzalo, which would put him at 7, and that's pretty low. And unless Manny has a land in hand, he can't get rid of Chandra this turn either. Right. And if he did have a land, he would have to Lightning Strike Chandra if he's willing to do that. He's going to fire up both Mutavaults. The whole team swings in. That's going to be 3 damage to Chandra. She drops down to 2. Caryatid prevents her from dying by jumping in the way of a Mutavault. And we see Fire Drinker Satyr for Manny. That is aggressive, right? He's playing it into a Chandra. Well, the Chandra is going to kill something no matter what. Right. And I think at this point you use your mana. You're okay with the fact that she's going to kill Satyr instead of the token. And that's what happens. He takes 2 off that. He goes to 17. Yep. Another land for Gonzalo and a pass. Gonzalo on 1 card in his hand. I believe it is a Mizzium Mortars. Not too helpful against a bunch of Mutavaults, but... Yeah. So if you're Gonzalo, how do you feel about using the Chandra to kill the Fire Drinker Satyr for sure, as opposed to using the 0 ability and trying to hit something that could potentially put you super far ahead? Like maybe hit something like a Nissa? I think I want to kill the Satyr because Satyr can swing through Caryatid on this board. Yeah. Manny's going to use this whole turn to knock Chandra down, to get Chandra off the battlefield. And he did play his 3rd Mutavault, so he topped off that Magma Jet. Gonzalo has a Mutavault of his own, but he has no action right now. You're right, he needs a Nissa. A Courser of Crufix would be great.
a Xenagos would be pretty good too.
Yeah, basically anything would be great, but these young Planeswalker decks end up playing a lot of, I guess, air in their decks. You know, it's like you have Caryatid, you have Elvish Mystic, you have a bunch of mana sources, you have some cards that might not be the right answers for the threats that your opponent has.
And there we go. Courser of Krufix. Gonzalo, that last turn, he tried to block the Mutavault. That took the Lightning Strike from Manny's hand. And then he got to draw Courser, which is pretty excellent here.
Yeah, certainly. And then, you know, his Erectus is returned on top of his deck, which is okay, not great. If you ever get into a somewhat racing situation, like Rakdos' return is a great finisher, but at this point, Manny's hand has basically just been completely expended.
A very aggressive attack from Manny. I swung all 3 Mutavaults and the token, and you had to think something was up because Gonzalo took 3, and indeed it was. Manny had drawn Shock, so Shock dealt the final 2 points to deal with Courser of Krufix. Looking at Velasquez's list, I was trying to think, okay, what does he want to top deck? All right, I decided the best card, he has a 1 of Bile-Blight in the main.
Yeah.
That would be my top pick on this board right now.
Yeah, probably. I mean, Nissa might be like the obvious one, right? It's like, oh, I get this steady stream of 4/4s. That's pretty good,
okay,
right?
Yeah.
But I mean, Bile-Blight might just completely stabilize him.
Yeah, we see 3 more points. Gonzalo is down to 4. He cast a large Rakdos' return that turn to put Manny down to 12. And now he's not going to take 3 a turn, he's going to take 1. He draws another Caryatid. Here come 2 Mutavaults and an Elemental. Gonzalo takes 1, he's down to 3, but that's a pretty precarious number against this Rabble Red deck. They're very capable of dealing 3. And Elvish Mystic, so now we've stopped all the creatures. But Lightning Strike still deals 3, and that's what he got Gonzalo to. Manny Orellana top decks it and is up a game.
I really like the way that Manny played that game.
Well, so Gonzalo had what we deemed almost a perfect hand in that matchup, right?
Yeah. I mean, like I said, he did need a thing at the top end that would either stabilize him or, you know, put some pressure on Manny. And Manny just weathered through like all the coursers, all the mortars. No big deal.
Yeah, and it shows, I think, a strong matchup for him, but I agree. I liked how he played it. Normally, you'd be wary of pointing so many burn spells at creatures. You know, like one of the pitfalls of playing a deck with a lot of burn is you end up, if you kill too many things, then you can't kill your opponent.
Right, but all those Mutavaults did so much work.
Right, I think Manny correctly identified that the Mutavaults meant he didn't have to burn his opponent, and he was able to play, like, adjust his game plan.
Yeah, we'll just grind his board down to basically nothing, and then just get him for like 3 points a turn, and that's fine.
Right. Well, Manny's up a game. He's going to need 1 more. He's won 3 straight games over John Walkers. Can he get the 4th and win the tournament? We'll find out in a second. But first, we're going to ask you our last trivia question. If you've been watching the top 8 with us, this question should come as no surprise. We've already talked about the RTR sets on their way out. That's Return to Ravnica and Gatecrash. So we're going to look at our last set and reminisce about the cards. So our question for you, this is for a year's worth of Starseed Premium. If you could open just 1 more booster of Dragon's Maze, what rare would you want to open and why? Send us your creative answers, your card preferences. Make sure you have the hashtag SCG Premium. And at the end of the finals, one of you will be selected to win 12 months of SCG Premium.
All right, I have my answer. What's yours?
I'm going to go with Possibility Storm.
Okay, that's a cool one.
Right, so this was a combo that's in Standard right now. So this was the worst deck idea I had in a while.
So you're holding out on everyone.
Okay, yeah.
You had a sweet combo that you could have had people play on the last week.
So here's the thing. You play Possibility Storm and Eidolon of Rhetoric.
Okay, then what happens?
I play a 65-card deck.
Okay.
So we get them both in play. I'm like, hey, no one can play spells anymore. And you deck first. That's my whole plan. Now, there is a problem with this strategy. And the problem is that Mutavault exists as a card, and a couple people play it.
Yeah, it's tough.
So I'm going to assemble my combo, and I probably will die to Mutavaults.
Okay.
But I have a 1/4, so maybe I'm okay.
Yeah.
I got the first Mutavault covered.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
All right. Make sure you tweet your answer to us. Just as a reminder, this promotion is sponsored by Star City Games Premium, and it's not affiliated with Twitch TV. Or with Twitter. But we do make sure if you're following us at SCG Live and have this hashtag, you'll be eligible to win.
You want my answer?
Yeah.
Ral Zarek.
Okay, so you know what? That guy has not seen as much play as I wanted him to see.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, all I wanted to do, I wasn't going to play with it because I think it falls a little short. But
you want to open it.
I want to open it, and then I want to have David McDarby sign it, and then I would cherish it always.
Has he cosplayed as Relzair?
He did at Gen
Okay,
Con.
at Gen Con. I know he's done Jace. And okay, it was Relzair.
Rel's the new one. I mean, like, he's always going to be a Jace guy, right? But
yeah, I mean, he's still a blue planeswalker. I can get behind that. Yeah. All right, looking at our sideboards, we've seen this before from Manny. And what he can board in the matchup. We talked about possibilities of Perforos, Chandra, and Boros Reckoner, but let's look at Gonzalo's sideboard. These John Walker's decks, as you said, have been all over the place. What weapons does he bring?
Well, he has 2 Mistcutter Hydra, 2 Scavenging Ooze, 2 Doomblade, 2 Magma Spray, 2 Anger of the Gods, 2 Duress, 1 Rakdos' Return, and 2 Thoughtseize, and he has a decent amount of options and certainly more options than Steven Mann had in the matchup. So he has 2 Scavenging Oozes, couple Doom Blades, which are okay. You know, he's already got plenty of removal spells. Maybe he wants some more, or maybe he wants to kind of upgrade some of the ones that he already has. 2 Magma Sprays, which are definitely coming in just because of how cheap they are and how good they are against Chandra's Phoenix. Anger of the Gods is coming in probably for a similar reason. Also Exile Chandra Phoenix, and good against things like Goblin Rabble Master or Young Pyromancer if they get out of control. And then things like Duress and Rakdos' Return can be really good against things like Stoke the Flames and just Manny's abundance of burn spells.
You know, he already has a Rakdos' Return in the main. We saw that last game he top decked it and really, you know, he pointed a 6-point burn spell at Manny, but it didn't really do too much that game.
That Rakdos' Return was a little too late, and I feel like given the draw that Gonzalo had, if he had it a little earlier, maybe it would have been pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, the question is, do you want, like, is this a card that you just want a lot more of? He already has one. Do you want a second? Like,
I think on the play, you want the second one. On the draw, it's kind of sketchy. Maybe you only want one.
This is the second time. One other thing, this is just of a note in the deck. It's the second time I've seen sideboarded Thoughtseizes. And, like, to me, Thoughtseize is just, like, this generic, like, I think it holds, you know, it's in the running for best card in Standard right now. Like, it's just really powerful. But we're seeing these John Walker's decks not play them in the main, and they're playing them out of the board.
Well, I think one of the things that this John Walker deck is really good at is top decking powerful cards in the late game, whereas drawing a Thoughtseize on turn 10 is generally not that good. And also, the mana base features a lot of enter the battlefield tap lands, right? So you don't get to Thoughtseize on 1. You don't have the starts like Thoughtseize into Pack Rat that the decks like Mono Black Devotion have. So you can't really capitalize on how powerful that card is in this deck, I think.
So when you're playing Elvish Mystics and Sylvan Caryatids and a bunch of Temples, it's not guaranteed that you'll have time to Thoughtseize when you want to Thoughtseize.
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly true, but also because you have those cards, you're going to be drawing a lot of those cards on the later turns of the game, and you really don't want that.
Yeah, you already have a lot of cards that are somewhat weaker, like these mana creatures that are weaker in the late game.
Yeah, a lot of your cards have diminishing returns already, and I don't know if you want to further exacerbate that fact.
Okay, that's fair enough. We are underway. Gonzalo's on the play. Manny is on a 6-card hand here. And Gonzalo, just with a couple stomping grounds to start the game, looks like he has a lot of removal, featured among them Mizium Mortars and Magma Spray.
Yeah, we saw him move that Magma Spray up top to the front of his hand when he had that stomping ground open, and it felt like it didn't really matter what Manny played. If he played anything, he was going to kill it.
All right, and Gonzalo dodged a bullet there. He kept a 2-lander. On turn 3, drew his 3rd land, and now gets to play Courser of Krufix. He actually has a pair of Coursers in his hand. So this hand doesn't have the mana accelerants that you normally want in John Walker's, but a pair of Coursers might just be enough against Rabble Red anyway.
Yeah, especially on your play, when you're on the play. Like, maybe when you're on the draw, that might actually be a little too slow, right? You could just get run over.
Yeah, I mean, especially when you have the Coursers backed up by cards like Magma Sprays, it seems like you probably won't get run over and you have time to start gaining life with these guys.
Yeah, but like we saw in game 1, Gonzalo had that draw. He had the removal spells. He had the Courser of Krufix. Going into like turn 5 or something, he was at 18 life, and Manny still just like ground down his board and then eventually nickel and dimed him out with Mutavaults. So eventually Gonzalo is going to need something like a Nissa to actually put pressure on Manny and close this game out.
Do you think here, you know, Manny's kind of playing his turn 3 play, can Manny win through the Coursers, or does he have to kill them?
I don't think he has to. He can certainly have the all burn spell draw, right? Or just like Chandra's Phoenix and burn spells.
But with 2 Coursers, then it's like every land drop gains 2. Like burning through that seems really hard.
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly true, but are you going to be like, okay, I'm going to Lightning Strike and Shock one of your Coursers. Now you have this other one. Okay, I'll stoke the other one.
I suppose you're right. He's scared enough of the person that Manny's turn for the play for the turn was double Shock to take care of Courser. And then here's Here's the cincher. Here's another Courser. Gonzalo gains the life, goes up to 19.
Yeah. How do you feel about waiting until Gonzalo's draw step to use those 2 shocks?
So I can see the card.
Yeah, so you can see the card, but also Gonzalo gets to see the card, right? So you both get the information. Who do you think can use that better? Is that something worth doing?
I like how Manny played it. I actually don't think Rabble Red, information is fun, but not great. Whereas and I've seen people make that play, whereas, Gonzalo, he plays things like maybe he has a Chandra in his hand, maybe he has a Temple in his hand. I think Gonzalo has a lot more things he can do with the top card of his deck.
Yeah.
And we see Manny take his turn. That's going to be an attack for 2 from Mutavault and then a casting of Young Pyromancer. And Gonzalo, his deck is just firing on all cylinders here. Draws Mizium Mortars, kills the Young Pyromancer. We see Anger of the Gods waiting on top of the deck.
Just in case.
He's just going to kill everything. He doesn't have a way to win yet. You see his hand is another Mortars, a Magma Spray, a Golgari Charm, Anger on top, and I believe his last card is Scavenging Ooze, so that's actually a pretty good one.
Yeah, that's certainly a good card. And we saw Manny attack the Mutavault into the Courser last turn, and Gonzalo's just like, yeah, I see that you're trying to give me a 2-for-1 here. I'm not going to take it. So now he has Golgari Charm set up, so if Manny makes the same trade, Gonzalo's going to be able to get a 2-for-1, but not with the Courser, with the Golgari Charm, which I think is a trade that Gonzalo definitely wants to make.
Yeah, Manny's going to go for it. He swings Mutavault here. Right, so you're expecting Manny to try to trade Mutavault and Burn Spell for Courser, but he's going to be disappointed with how this one ends up. He goes for the shock, and then here is the Golgari Charm to regenerate Courser.
Yeah, but I think Manny did this really well, right? He let combat damage resolve before doing it, and then played another land, so it's like, uh-oh, he might have 2 burn spells. So it ends up being a 3-for-2. I mean, I guess it doesn't really change.
Right, so here's the danger. It's a 3-for-2, and since Manny's been...
No, it would have been different, actually, because Manny didn't play his Mountain in combat, so if, maybe with damage, before damage, he Golgari Charms, Manny wouldn't have been able to kill the Courser that turn. He would have had to do it on Gonzalo's turn. So I guess, yeah, it doesn't change much, but...
But the danger is Manny's now out of cards, and Gonzalo simply just plays Scavenging Ooze and eats all... after all this trading, there's plenty of food for the Ooze. Manny's going to Skull Crack him once, but... This is fine. Gonzalo's at 18. He's got a 4-4. Manny has no cards in hand. I am unconvinced of Rabble Red's ability to come back from this kind of board.
Yeah, especially now that Ooze is a 5-5. So any potential Mizium Mortars that Manny brought in to go with his Stoke the Flames, he basically just can't deal with the Scavenging Ooze.
This isn't the kind of deck that has changed to the rocks or something.
Well, I spoke too soon because we talked about those Boros Reckoners coming in because they're good against cards like this. So.
Absolutely. And this is actually where, once again, that 5-5 is so important. Gonzalo has a Mizium Mortars, and normally, were the Ooze only a 4-4, you couldn't Mortars the Reckoner. And, while I normally don't want to Mortars the Reckoner, this is, one of the few boards where I think I'm just okay doing it. I take 4. It's really annoying that your card's good.
I'll take 4, but I'll also attack you for 5. Well, potentially 6 because exiling the Reckoner.
So Gonzalo makes that play, goes down to 12. Back up to 13, eats the Boros Reckoner. Ooze becomes a 6-6. And he's going to put Manny down to 9.
It kind of looks like Scavenging Ooze might be the very best card that Gonzalo can have in this matchup. It's super cheap. It gains you a bunch of life, can potentially get you out of burn range and get itself out of burn range, and then you can just ride that to victory.
And swing from Scavenging Ooze puts Manny down to 3. He's got 1 more turn to draw here. He's going to Stoke the Flames at Gonzalo. So as long as he can top deck a 9-point bird spell, he should be fine here.
Oh, yeah, that's no big deal, right?
Yeah. And his draw is not there, so we are on to game 3. Manny almost had the clean sweep of 4 games against Jundwalkers, but Gonzalo not going to let him have it that easily.
Yeah, I mean, you saw Manny draw a Stoke and a Lightning Strike at the end, so... Gonzalo was at 6, even after all that stuff, all the life gain from the Coursers and the Scavenging Ooze. So it's if Gonzalo doesn't draw Scavenging Ooze, if it's another removal spell or something, Manny probably has that game.
Yeah, there still are options here. I think double, Gonzalo drew the cards that are, I think, his trumps in the matchup,
Magma Spray, Courser.
Yeah, and the Magma Spray didn't even come out as much. It was, Courser, Ooze.
It didn't, but it covered him against a lot of stuff.
Yeah. Magma Spray, course, and it's interesting because that hand had no mana accelerants in it. Normally, when you're playing a deck like Jundwalkers, you're wary to keep hands without mana accelerants, right? Those are pretty good, but having life gain seems to be more important.
Oh, certainly, and I mean, something like Magma Spray just being so cheap, that is effectively a life gain spell. If you get to play that on turn 1 or turn 2 and stop one of Manny's really good threats, then that is going to gain you more life over the course of a game than something like a turn 3 courser would. And also, by boarding in stuff like Magma Spray, Gonzalo's lowering his mana curve, and then the mana accelerants aren't as important. You know, like you might think game 1, he's got a bunch of like Liliana, Vraska, Nissa, like all these expensive cards that he basically needs accelerants to play in a timely manner. You know, so those cards are actually relevant on a board state. You know, they don't come down when you're basically like dead on board. But post-board, maybe he's cutting on some of that stuff, lowering his mana curve, and then it's like, well, if I draw an Elvish Mystic, that's kind of nice. If I draw a Sylvan Caryatid, it can block, that's cool. But really, you don't need those.
If you do not have an opponent,
Yeah, so
please raise your hand.
if you're boarding out enough high end, do you start cutting mana creatures in a deck like this?
That's certainly a possibility. I think Caryatid fixes your mana and also blocks pretty well. So probably not that one. Against most Rabble Red decks with things like Foundry Street Denizen, Elvish Mystic is actually pretty good, kind of like as a pseudo Magma Spray. Like you can either block that or a Fire Drinker Satyr. Manny doesn't have a ton of that stuff that he can actually block. Fire Drinker Satyr and a raw Legion Loyalist, maybe, but then like some Elemental tokens, some Goblin tokens.
It's like Mystic might be too good to cut, and Caryatid, like as a 0/3, is actually just a reasonable card.
Yeah, I mean, I could certainly see cutting some Mystics, but I do feel like they still have value. I think a lot of that depends on how many Nissas Gonzalo wants to keep in, though.
Okay, if he's boarding out all the Nissas, then you might want to board out some Elves as well.
Right.
That would make sense. I don't. He's got a good sideboard. I don't know if he has enough to make that. He probably. The other thing is that that's going pretty far down the list of cards he doesn't want in the matchup. You know, for like your Lilianas and Vraskas probably come out first.
Sure. But I mean, he's also boarding in things like Anger of the Gods, so drawing a bunch of mana accelerants might not be the best plan there too.
Yeah. I'm trying to think other things he boards. He has Read the Bones in the deck. That's probably not very good
I mean,
here.
something like Mistcutter Hydra might even be reasonable just because it's a thing that can put pressure on Manny.
That's actually really interesting. Normally you wouldn't think, oh yeah, you know, Rabble, low-end red aggro deck, bring in Mistcutter Hydra. But when you put, it's not unreasonable. It is. We have seen like that a 4/4 for 4 last round when Steven Mann was playing it. It was Gorklan Rampager, no bells and whistles, just the guy. It was actually pretty good. And Mistcutter, okay, yeah, it's a 3/3 for 4, which is a pretty relevant loss, but even a 4/4 for 5 is stabilizing in the matchup.
Yeah, I mean, you look at Mistcutter on any part of the curve, right? And it's like, well, that card doesn't seem very good. But the thing that makes it so good is that it's variable, right? If you have 4 extra mana and nothing else to do on that turn, you can make it a 3/3. But this John Walker's deck ends up having a decent amount of mana sources, both because of its accelerants, but also because of Courser of Proof Fix. So, you know, on turn 5 or 6 or something, you might have just a bunch of mana lying around, not a lot to do, and then you're just like, hey, Manny, take 7.
Yeah, it's weak in the late game, but it's not unplayably weak. And as we've seen before, a 5/5 that's like the sweet spot against Rabble Red. It's like once you get to 5/5, they don't really come back. They don't really kill your guy anymore.
And you do have to pressure them because if Gonzalo did not have that pressure last game, Manny probably could have assembled enough burn to finish him off, even after just getting 2 for 1 multiple times to finish off those coursers.
Right, Manny is playing a 16 burn spell version of Rabble Red, so that does change how you have to approach the matchup.
Plus, he's siding in things like Skullcrack.
Yeah, we did see a Skullcrack. He does have a full 3 Skullcrack in his board, so you would assume that most of them, if not all, are in. And is it possible that, like, post-board, Manny just becomes... he just skews his deck even more toward being a burn deck here?
Well, things like Fire Drinker Satyr don't really line up well against Elvish Mystic. It's okay against Sylvan Caryatid, and certainly pretty bad against things like Chandra Pyromaster and Golgari Charm, which he knows are in Gonzalo's deck.
Yeah, that's a very good point. A lot of these cards, he does get to see Gonzalo's sideboard, so he knows what he's playing around. When you start cutting things like Fire Drinker Satyrs, that also encourages you to cut things like Legion Loyalist, too, because as you cut creatures, Legion Loyalist looks more and more like Raging Goblin.
Yeah, and then that weakens Gonzalo's Golgari Charms and the Anger of the Gods that he's sideboarding in.
Yeah, exactly. So we are just about underway for Game 3 here. This one is for the championship. It is between Manny Orellana and Gonzalo Velasquez.
Has Jund Planeswalkers won a tournament yet?
Has it won a tournament? Probably somewhere.
Probably somewhere. But okay, let's say, let's say like Open Series. I'm pretty sure Jund Planeswalkers is basically just like the perennial second place finisher.
I can tell you, it does have more than one runner-up at the very
Yeah.
least. So, is it destined for another bridesmaid appearance? We'll see here. Manny starting out on 2 basic mountains, no plays yet. Gonzalo on 2 temples. Does not look like he has any plays either. And instead, Manny's going to Magma Jet him and start some scrying.
That's always scary, right? Where they're just like, let's get this party started. Let's start going upstairs, start burning you.
Yeah, well, I really like, this is where Magma Jet is a really nice card. I mean, it's not shock draw card, but it's not that far off. Like scrying 2 in a mono red deck is like probably more powerful than it is in a lot of other strategies.
Oh, that's certainly true. One of the easiest ways for these burn decks to lose is just by getting mana flooded.
And we see Chandra's Phoenix was the play that turn for Manny. He puts Gonzalo down to 16. Does Gonzalo have the stream of coursers like he did last game? It does not look like it. It looks like he does have removal. See what he wants to do here. He has 1 courser, I believe.
Yeah, so I think the 2 things to note here are that it looked like Manny scryed Amizium Mortars to the top to deal with any potential coursers. And for all the removal spells that Gonzalo is citing in that deals with Chandra's Phoenix and exiles it, like Magma Spray and Anger of the Gods, he doesn't have it.
Yeah, and you see Manny is going to go ahead and shock Gonzalo, get back Chandra's Phoenix, and recast. Gonzalo taking 4 that turn as a result. Manny, more or less, you could say, I think he cast a very good Stoke the Flames that turn, right? 4 mana for 4 damage, and he gets to keep a 2/2 around.
Right. Yeah, it always looks like Manny's just off to such a slow start, right? And then you look back on turn 4, it's like, whoa, my opponent's at 12 life.
That's exactly my thought, right? What did he play? He played Chandra's Phoenix and like a couple shock.
A shock, yeah.
Like that's not good. Those spells don't deal a lot of damage.
It's not like Gonzalo's just been playing Shocklands untapped willy-nilly, you know?
Yeah.
Like, to his credit, he's been doing his part. He's been, like, he knows what he has to do to win this matchup, and he's trying.
Gonzalo makes Sylvan Caryatid for the turn. He does have a courser, but finding a window to cast it is getting pretty difficult. Instead, he just has to keep his life total high. He waits until Manny attacks, then ultimate prices it. Probably knowing that Manny can buy it back, but just doesn't want to give Manny the attack as well.
Right.
And it is Young Pyromaster for Manny. So a little bit of a reprieve. Gonzalo, not under a huge threat. It's not under an imminent threat here. He can maybe play his own threat. You see he has Dreadbore, Courser of Crufix, Xenagos the Reveler in hand. He's going to start with Dreadbore on Young Pyromaster. And before that resolves, Manny will Lightning Strike Gonzalo, which makes an Elemental, and rebuys the Chandra's Phoenix. Good play for Manny. Gonzalo's going to play Courser. He has not made a land drop yet. Does he find a land on top? Yes, he does. It's Stomping Ground, back up to 10. And you see the Magma Spray waiting on top of his deck. That could not have come sooner.
Yeah. Well, it could have.
It could.
It could have, and Gonzalo would have been very happy about that.
He needs this Magma Spray.
Yes, he does. It's like, oh man, you're a little too late, but yeah, like I still like this. This is still great.
Yeah, I mean he's about to face the Chandra's Phoenix for the 3rd time here. And Manny swings the Elemental token into Courser.
Legacy player.
Opted not to Chandra's Phoenix that turn. We'll see if he has enough damage to finish it off. I would assume so.
Minutes. You may begin.
And maybe not. He's going to play Boros Reckoner. And was that just a bluff? Looks like his remaining cards
That's interesting.
are Amizium Mortars and Chandra's Phoenix. Not a terrible bluff, actually.
No, it's not.
The guy's not doing anything else, and as soon as Gonzalo has an untapped Caryatid, you know that the Caryatid is just going to block the 1/1. So this was like the 1/1's last hurrah at maybe dealing a damage someday.
Yeah, I mean, Manny does have the mortars in his hand that it looks like he just wants to overload next turn and get that Caryatid out of the way.
Sure.
I totally understand not playing Chandra's Phoenix that turn to get into damage when you know your opponent has a Magma Spray. It seems like just developing your board more solidly with a Boros Reckoner is probably going to be more beneficial.
Yeah, you see Gonzalo making Xenagos and a Satyr for the turn. The remaining cards in his hand are Magma Spray and another Xenagos, but boy, would a land be good for Manny here, and he draws the land for the turn. And here comes Amizium Mortars. Rabble Red in the rare situation where he gets the full 6 mana.
Yeah, this 21 land deck. No lands in the sideboard.
And what a huge turn. Just gets Courser, gets Sylvan Curated, attacks down Xenagos.
So I'm going to use this one card and kill all of your permanents.
Yeah.
That's pretty powerful.
Gonzalo can recover. He does have another Xenagos and another Curated.
Yeah.
So he reloads, but if Manny didn't have that Mortars, things were going to start to get pretty bad for him.
Yeah, definitely agree.
And very interesting, a swing from the Satyr with Gonzalo. That commits to him chump blocking with Sylvan Curated.
Yeah, I mean, like, what's the Satyr going to do? Block the Reckoner? I mean, I think
That's
you're. I
what-
think you're
combat
probably
with Reckoner just is always miserable.
Yeah.
Whenever you look at it.
Yeah, well, especially if Manny plays Chandra's Phoenix, Gonzalo's tapped out. So the Chandra's Phoenix is going to get a hit in this turn, right? So if you put the Satyr on the Reckoner, Manny has 4 points that he can distribute anywhere he wants, and that's probably at the Xenagos.
Yeah, he's going to go Reckoner to Xenagos, Phoenix to Gonzalo. The Curated will chump the Reckoner. Gonzalo will go to 9. That's the last damage that Chandra's Phoenix gets to deal here, but Gonzalo's going to need a way to kill Reckoner. That guy is just so good against against green-red. Like, fighting that guy in combat is just the worst.
Yeah.
See a Temple from Gonzalo. Well, that's in his hand, so he hasn't played that. He's going to make another Satyr, swing for 4. Here's a Temple. He needs to find some way to mitigate this Reckoner damage. The difficult part about Reckoner is no matter how you fight him, you always end up taking damage. So when you're at a low life total and your opponent has a Reckoner, sometimes you just don't have any way to not die.
Yeah, you don't have a lot of good options. I mean, you saw Gonzalo use ultimate price earlier to kill a Chandra's Phoenix, and it's like, well, that doesn't kill Reckoner. So you have a couple Dreadbores and a Hero's Downfall and a Bile Blight to take care of that thing.
Now, Reckoner puts Gonzalo down to 6. It's getting really low. You have to think Manny has some amount to burn, but how much is it? See him surveying the board here. He knows he's close. There's probably just one burn spell away. Maybe not even that. Maybe the Reckoner can do it on its own. He's got to be careful. Manny makes a 6th power with this point of power with the Satyrs, and he's going to swing 2 of them. Puts Manny down to 10.
So now it's reasonable to keep a Satyr back because it cuts Manny's clock by a turn potentially, but
And
not
that's
with the Stoke
Manny's
the
going to
Flames.
stoke the Flames, Gonzalo down to 2, and with that, there's no way for Gonzalo to not take 2 from the Reckoner, and Manny Orellana is your Star City Games standard champion here with Rabble Red, fighting through a sea of Jund Walkers.